Would like to pick up where we left off yesterday. At the end of the video, I showed this image, and many people were more impressed by it than the original topic of the video, that this looks so much like some type of ancient city or cityscape skyline. I don't think is any accident. Especially, not so much even the larger square images, but you would have to ask yourself a question about these very, very skinny images. What could possibly be that tall, that skinny, and have survived in Antarctica? What process, what natural process would have created that? It's an area that's allegedly, according to science, just wind-blown ice, rock, and snow. I've never seen ice, rock, and snow cut itself into squares before, or spires before. And the odd thing about this is what 15th century map makers were showing. Now, I know these days, with the advent of modern technology, wasting ink is not a big deal, but back then, creating maps was an enormous undertaking. Just getting the right parchment and getting all of these different colors of ink, you didn't waste the space on the map. I mean, I know they created paintings of all sorts of different things, but maps were very different. They were the intelligence reports of their day. I've said that before. In this particular map, it shows very clearly on two different occasions castles. Now, this particular map is labeled Terre Brazil. Now, Brazil was kind of a generalized term back then. For example, Florida, La Florida, prior to the arrival of the English, everything from Nova Scotia around the tip of the Keys in Florida all the way over to the Gulf where Louisiana is was referred to as La Florida. For hundreds of years by the Spanish, it was claimed by the Spanish, and it was actually changed hands. This particular region I live in was the kind of epicenter of the feud between the Spanish and the French. Now, I have looked and looked, and there are some castles in Brazil, but they were built in the 20th century. They were built 1910, 1915. There's no way these buildings are these. So what in the world were these map makers talking about? I really honestly believe they were talking about what we know today to be modern Antarctica, and it was a very different place at the time. And it had buildings, and it had constructs. And speaking of that, I would like to show you guys something else that I found that I think you're going to think is very curious. Now, this is the Colossus of Rhodes. It was a statue that was built, an enormous creation, 108 feet tall, made of bronze. When it collapsed in 226 BC, it took, I think the description was 900 camels to haul away the remains. It was an amazing, amazing structure for its time, at one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Now, back here in Antarctica, we look and we see all of this imagery, and I've shown this in many different places. There's one specific one that it's much more defined, and I wish I would have brought that particular location to where I could see it, but I'm not going to waste your time looking for it, but it's been in other videos. But let me show you something very strange. Now, it's curious, but it looks very much like the statue of the Colossus of Rhodes. You can see one giant leg here, something being held, kind of a shield here, maybe a staff. You can see the head here. And here's the killer part about this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get out the measurement tool and show you how big this is. In meters. Start here at the top. and go all the way down to the bottom, and it is dead on, almost the same size as the Colossus of Rhodes, 33 meters, 108 feet. Now, I'm not saying this is the ancient Colossus of Rhodes, but if there was one civilization back then that could do it, why wouldn't there be another? I don't really have any other explanation for this, to be very truthful, this image. But I will say one thing about when you're looking at Google Earth Pro. If you find a region that shows up in high resolution when you zoom in, if you go up here and in the upper left, I have it on the screen, there's a little box you can click. It looks like a clock with an arrow that goes backward. That's the historical imagery box. You click it and this time slider shows up. If you get to an area and you see multiple images within like a year, like for example this area only has one image from 2012, the next one prior goes all the way back to 99. There are other areas where they have imaged it 2 and 3, sometimes 4 times in high res in the same year. When you find one of those areas, keep looking. Keep looking, because you will find all sorts of amazing things. And that's what I'm going to leave with today, is one of those regions. And I've labeled this area Blast Site. Now, I know that sounds like a very strange thing to label something, but I want you to look very closely at this piece of ice down here, this rock. It's the size of a house. I won't measure it here for you because I've already done it. 35 feet long, 25 feet wide, and 10 feet tall. Now, where it came from is this giant open square here. Now, the image that you're looking at right now is from 12/20 of 2012. This is like day before, remember, 2012, the Mayan apocalypse, all that? Okay, now we're going to go back to just October of that year. Let me get this out of the way. Here's what the image looked like. This same region, October 7th, 2012. They re-imaged it in high res only 2 months later. And look. Something exploded out of the side of this mountain, and it sent a house-size chunk in the shape of a square a good long distance. You know what? I will measure that distance because I haven't done that. Distance-wise, in feet, 450 feet, 138 meters. Now, this isn't a collapse. This is a blast. There's no way there would be a lot more stuff between this and this if it were just a collapse. Something exploded off the side of this mountain. And there's this very curious image here. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But you can look at this region in the previous years. This is 12/20/2012. This, of course, is 10/7/2012. This is 2/28/2010. And we don't see anything out of the ordinary until the day before, December 21st, 2012, when all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. Now, what happened? Who knows? Could be a lot of things, but this entire region right here, and I'll give you the location, of course, down in the description. I always do. And you can look at this for yourself. There's one other thing that I wanted to show, and I'll talk more about it tomorrow because it's too hard to explain and it's very difficult to show. Those of you out in my audience who are familiar with Ezekiel from the Bible, he spoke of a wheel within a wheel, a vision. Now, it's been interpreted a lot of different ways, but I found something very, very strange, and it is so hard to show. I'm going to try to show this, but it is a wheel, and then there is another small wheel within it, and there are 4 spokes. Now, those of you familiar with Bible prophecy and the stories of the Old Testament will know exactly what this is. Now, I can never say anything for sure, but I find this very, very odd. And I'm going to zoom in as close as I can here. It's very difficult to get the resolution on this right. I'll turn down the light as much as I can. But it is a dead ringer for the wheel within a wheel. And I guess I'll just leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.